It's a lovely Friday, the 9th of May 2025. Hope you're good out there. We are on SLTV channel 265. You can find us live on YouTube. We're live 247 on that platform and also on YouTube. You can also catch some of our programs on the other platforms. That's Instagram, Twitter, which is now X, and any other platforms that you use as on social media. We are actually headquarters here in Enugu State, Southeast Nigeria, just in case you're wondering where we're broadcasting from. All right. So today we're going to be looking at the welfare of people living with disability in Nigeria and the Nigerian working environment. I mean, there are most people who have, decided to take it upon themselves to, give a helping hand, and somewhat a problem. It's coming an issue with not giving them the opportunity to aspire, to grow, or even to give them the opportunity to work in an environment. And we've seen that over and over again over the years. Because of a certain disability, some persons are marginalized, are put down, are talked down upon. So we just want to highlight this issue with our guest this morning, CHINELO. OZOUDE. She's Secretary of Planning Committee of a program that is coming up this weekend. But let's welcome her. CHINELO, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How difficult is it to be one that is challenged by life, and how is the Nigerian society, absorbing, the physically challenged?
Okay, thank you very much. Persons living with disabilities go through a lot of challenges. And really, it's enough challenge. It's a very difficult task to live with any type of disability, whether you are visually impaired or you're, spinal cord patient, or you make use of the crutches, any of them. It's on its own, it's challenging. Not to be able to move around independently, you need aids. If people are not around you, you can't be able to do certain things. Then life on its own has not actually been totally fair in the society at large, because living with disability, sometimes people see it as maybe is a communicable disease, so they rarely offer assistance or help to persons living with disability. For instance, people with visual impairment, most times they need assistance either to get around their environment, to get something to get some things. Maybe they're looking for a particular object or a wear or stuff. So when you ask other people around for assistance, most times they're like, see it over there. They really want to come close to assist you, either get the object or take you to wherever you want to go, or give you the proper direction, or even teach you in an academic setting. So it's a very big challenge, and dealing with it can be traumatizing. So the society is not really helping at matters in any way. Yeah.
So do you think that the government have a role to play in assisting the society? And I know there are different, NGOs that's working overtime sometimes in bringing your plights to far. How much of that is working? And it could also add the government part.
Okay, as for the non-governmental organizations, well, there are a couple of them that have actually, brought out their time, dedicated their energy resources to assisting persons living with disability in empowerment, championing for educational inclusivity, and then also championing for independence and acceptance in the society. But the government also has a major role to play, because the Disability Act, some states have not really implemented the act, and that Disability Act is it's a very big way or a major tool whereby persons with disability can reach out and report either cases of abuse or discrimination or anything of any kind that are not really, that breaches their fundamental human rights. But because of some states have not really domesticated the act, it's very difficult for them to, you know, bring their plights, to the aids or to the hearing of the government, something like that. So, but the NGOs have, done well, and we also encourage other NGOs to also come in to see that persons living with disability will have a better atmosphere, to survive, get employment, and be properly taken care of.
How accessible are public institutions to people living with disability?
Well, in Nigeria, as a case study, the facilities, public infrastructures, the accessibility for persons living with disability is very poor. Because most times when you go to offices or government-owned facilities, persons on wheelchair can't easily access any building apart from the down floor. Even the down floor is almost impossible because there are a lot of stairs. So they basically need people to carry them. And most times these things are almost impracticable. And then persons with visual impairment as well, they without proper guidance, they can stumble on the stairs. So the disability, or rather the infrastructures are not disability friendly. Yeah, most of the infrastructures, even in schools, like some universities, when you go to school, you find it very difficult navigating your classroom because they are not disability friendly.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to access hospitals, schools, public institutions across boards for those living with disability?
Yes. Very difficult. For instance, if there is an emergency and you need to rush someone into the clinic, if without the aid of anyone, carrying the person or anything of that nature, you can't be able to lift that person because the person is probably on wheelchair or maybe use of crutches and needs help.
You mentioned the Act as the Disability Act. I think that was enacted in 2019 or so. That's around now, I think 6 years ago or so. I'm wondering, do you think that the government is making efforts, in pushing not just the federal government but state government? Because again, aside the federal government in doing the so-called Act enactment, there must be some domestication by state government. Do you feel that the federal government is putting enough pressure for the state government to domesticate this act in their various states?
Well, I can't say for sure, but ordinarily the acts needs to be domesticated by the state government for it to become a law in the various states. For now, a couple of states have actually domesticated theirs, and some are in process. Like I think Abia State, for instance, have domesticated the act. It actually become a law. They even have a disability commission, and a couple of other states are yet to, to domesticate that act. So I think if the federal government can win, it's really going to make a huge difference, to make sure that these acts are being domesticated, so that persons living with disability will be, protected under the law against discrimination, because there's a whole lot of discrimination, whether in employment, even in schools, and it's really very discouraging. Yeah.
Mm. What barriers do you think that people living with disability face when it comes to gaining employment, gaining admissions in school? Are there specific barriers that people living with disability face?
Yes, there are a couple of barriers they face. For instance, getting a job, even when you are competent, even when you have the certificate, even when you can perfectly handle that position, sometimes when the employers, they look at you and like, we are sorry, we can't employ you, simply because you're, a person with disability, not because you are not competent, not because you're not capable of handling that position. So it's more in the private sector. Yeah, most times the public sector have actually absorbed a couple of persons living with disability, and that's really encouraging. But the private sector is at least, let me say, like 1%.
1%.
Yes, they really employ persons with disability. They really do, even when you can handle that position more than your able counterpart. The employment is very slim for them. So it's a very big challenge. We go to school, some of them are lawyers, doctors, engineers, they handle so many professional courses and they do wonderfully well. But when you're out from school, employment becomes an issue. So the discrimination against persons with disability is very high and is a major barrier. Then coming to the educational sector, persons with visual impairment, for instance, they face a barrier because there are certain courses you can offer in the university simply because you're blind. They tend to tell you that there are no equipment for those practicals. You will not be able to handle it, and it's really very discouraging. So most times we are kind of boxed into a corner, going for a particular course, either going for law or going for political science or other things. So it's a very big barrier. If there are equipment that can help us in the laboratories, I know that most of us will go for science courses and do perfectly well.
What kind of equipment do you think can be used to assist people living with disability, especially for schools?
There are a lot of assistive technologies, assistive devices, for instance, for persons with visual impairment, like I will always say, laptop systems, when they have their laptops with their assistive devices, they can be able to function properly, perfectly well. They also have the braillers, braille machines or the braille embossers. They can also have their digital recorders, to take lectures in school, and a couple of other devices that can help them, make studying easy. Because without these things, studying can be very stressful and most times impossible. Yes, so that's it.
Mm.
Yeah.
You mentioned something around the likes of the workplace environment. You mentioned that especially private sector, they hardly even look at the opportunity of employing people who are mostly living with disability. And you also mentioned the reason why. I mean, do you think something can be done in that regard, in making them and forcing them to do it? Because again, I mean, I can imagine, going through school, finding it difficult to go through school, get through school, get certificates, and all of a sudden, not that you're not qualified for a certain position, but you qualify, you're not given the opportunity just because. So I'm just wondering, do you think there's something that must be done to stop the discrimination?
Yes, that's why I talked about the domestication of the act. Is that act, protection of persons living with disability against discrimination, yeah, for persons living with disability, is going to go a long way, because that act alone, from some private sectors, it's discriminatory. So if that act is being domesticated, people living with disability can,
Sue?
report, yes, or sue the establishments, because it's a fundamental right. They are infringing on their fundamental rights. That someone was born disabled or got disabled along the line is not his or her own making or choice. So it shouldn't be a ground for denial or rejection. If I'm not competent enough to handle the position, it's understandable. Then telling me that I'm sorry, I can't give you this position because you feel like I'm living with a disability and I have nothing to offer, that's discriminatory. And when people cannot handle some of this discrimination, it can be depressing. They fall into depression and then become suicidal. So they can sue the establishment or bring the reports. That's when this law is being domesticated. That's why we are clamoring for the domestication of that act by various states.
Mm.
Yeah.
But those who have the jobs, are there specific complaints about how they are perceived within the work environment?
Yeah, there are a couple of complaints by people. Yes, of course. I have a friend that works in the public sector, and she, at some point last year, she was actually due for promotion, and up until now, she has not been promoted. Not because she wasn't actually giving her best. She comes to work, she works, and she does every other thing any other able person can do, but they just don't feel like she's worthy enough to be promoted or something. That's why she keeps being delayed every year. They keep telling her stories, and she's written a couple of times, and yet nothing has been done. So even in that working space, or workspace rather, they face a lot of discrimination and challenges. When you want to do something, they'll say, no, leave it. Not because you can't do it, but they perceive that because of your disability, you may not be able to handle it well. Yeah.
So, that is the kind of things that we face, even within the work environments, talking about government establishment.
Yes.
This story you told was, is it inside a government parastatal?
Yes, it was in a government parastatal.
I mean, if government have domesticated it, is it, why wouldn't they take it up?
Yeah, it's also it also boils out on the individual involved, because when she reached out to me, I told her to take it up, but she was very skeptical because the directors, the bosses, they were actually threatening her indirectly, and she told me something. She said, "What if I take this matter up and at the end of the day I lose my job?" So that's another fear. But it doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. There's every possibility that you may end up not losing your job and still, get redress, or get the justice you seek. But some other times people are very skeptical. They are scared, because employment or getting a job in Nigeria is very difficult and tough for the able-bodied, not talk less of persons living with disability. So once they have one job, they grab it with both hands. And letting go most times is impossible for them, or very difficult. So they don't want to take those chances. So it's another challenge, a major challenge. So we encourage persons with disability to speak up. If you're being discriminated or you're being treated poorly wherever you work, there's any human treatment meted out on you, you can report, so that you can get redress.
What is the level of public awareness and sensitivity that is out there? Because most people don't even know the level of, engagement or the level of sensitivity that they should have when dealing with people living with disability.
Yeah, I feel like the sensitivity is, it's not much, although we've been hosting programs, shows online and stuff. And that's why there's a program that will be coming up soon. That program is basically to enlighten the public on the ability in disability. There'll be talent horns, people will come and showcase their various talents, singing, dancing, poetry, spoken words. And there'll also be empowerment for persons with disability and educational, inclusive education for persons with disability as well. So we need to let the public know that despite the fact that persons are living with disability have one deformity or the other, that doesn't deter them in any way. That doesn't stop them from functioning properly or delivering, in any aspect or area of life where they find themselves. Some of us are very good singers. When you listen to them, you're like, wow, this is wonderful. But because the public don't really want to, or I wouldn't say they don't want to, because the public is not properly informed. Most of these people are just behind their closed doors singing. But because if there's enough public awareness, maybe the popular artists we know can pick up one or two persons and feature them in their songs, and they'll do very well. You understand? So the public, even the media, needs to assist us in disseminating the information and letting the general public know that ability is in disability, no matter what, no matter the type of disability. Nobody, no single person is without an ability or talent.
Quite interesting, really. I mean, you said there's a program coming up. Where is it coming up? Is it in Enugu, and what is involved?
Okay, the program will be held here in Enugu at Thinkers Corner Bina Foundation. There's a non-governmental organization at their premises. It's going to be very interesting. You all are encouraged to be there. It's not just for persons with disabilities, it's for everyone. I want to showcase the talents and then also empower persons with disability. To encourage them to be independent and be confident in their skin, no matter what. Don't allow anyone put you down. So it's really going to be an interesting program, and you wish not to miss it. Yes.
Okay, it's interesting. So if you were to speak to the states that have not in any way domesticated this act, especially because we have governors of those states, You would say that maybe they're not even aware of this. Somebody has to actually push it through. If you have the opportunity to speak into them regarding this development, what would you be telling them?
Okay, if I'm to speak on that, I would tell the government, the governors that are yet to domesticate the act, to, you know, promptly do so that they will encourage persons with disability to be part of the decision makings in their states. To be able to throw in their weights and bring what they've got, their God's given talent. Because without this domestication, persons are very skeptical. They're scared. What if I do this? What if I do that? There's no protection. But once the laws are being, once the act is being domesticated, they know that there's a law backing them. Not as if they'll go ahead committing crime or being a nuisance or constituting nuisance in any way, but they will come out to be part of the decision making, part of the government, and then build a better society where everyone is going to be comfortable and going to live as one.
All right, and I wanted to speak directly also to those who may also be living with disability, because it's easy to be depressed in a society where it doesn't even understand how important the people living with disability, the predicaments are, and they don't have that sensitivity. You would think that there's this air of disadvantaged treatments that is meted towards them. So if you were to speak to the people who live with disability, what would you be telling them? How do you speak to them in order to improve their own mindsets, to be able to stand off or kill off whatever the society may throw at them?
Okay, thank you for that question. For persons living with disability, I would say you should be comfortable in your skin despite the disability. It's not your own making, and every person is every single person, as long as you still have breath in you, is prone to being disabled, because anything can happen. So if you are disabled in any way, don't shy away. You need to come out and show yourself, show your ability, show that you can do it. And if you're in school, maybe in university or polytechnic, in any educational, in any form of going through any form of educational training, don't be shy to ask questions or to learn, because sometimes persons with disability, they feel like they should be pitied, sympathy all the way. I feel pity for me, I can't see, I can't work. No. Instead, you should be seeking for empathy and not sympathy in any way. So you need to come out. And if you are going through any challenge, any sexual abuse or abuse of any kind, assaults or discrimination, you should be able to speak out. Make the necessary inquiries and report the matter to the appropriate authority so that you can, get justice. Because another issue they face is abuse, by even their parents, siblings, spouses. They go through a lot of abuse, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and they don't speak because they are scared. What if I speak and at the end of the day, I still go back to this set of people? What happens? But you can't continue to die in silence. You need to let your voice out. Report the matter to the appropriate authority and make sure you follow it up to seek justice. If you don't have the financial capability, because that is another major challenge they face, because most of them are unemployed. So they really have the finances to, go for the or pursue these cases. They'll be like, I don't even have money to eat, talk less of going to the police or making any reports. There are NGOs that can, pick up the matters. There are also lawyers, human rights lawyers that do pro bono cases. You can reach out to these people, and they will help you. Report the case and do justice to it.
All right. I want to say a very big thank you to you, and the fact that you've got this amazing strengths and you exude a lot of positivity, from where I sit and just watching and listening to you. I want to say a very big thank you for staying strong and for staying right above, the waters. I mean, you're even much more confident than some persons who claim not to be, who claim not to be able. But again, I just want to say a very, very big thank you, Chinelo, for your time here and for explaining a few things. I hope that the public would find some time, to look at these issues with a view to co-opting, everyone, into the system of helping the society grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sig-Nature TV. News in your pocket.